Croeso pawb, welcome everyone. Croeso I ysbryd y coed. Welcome to Spirit of the Trees, my home. And I'm going to give you this year's tour. I think for the last couple of years now, I've managed to do a tour on my YouTube channel every summertime. And I'm going to focus just on the Polytunnel and veg and herb garden. But I thought I'd start here in what I call the circle of life. We've got our standing stone behind you, spreading out the energy to the whole field, and we've got our orchard, which is doing a lot better now we've got the old heritage Welsh apple varieties in here that are used to our Welsh clay soil and our Welsh wet, windy weather. So these are coming along. We've even had some apples this year. But I'm now going to take you down in the garden and show you the reality of our garden. Our focus of our garden is to grow food for myself and my partner, and to grow enough herbs for my clients and my students. So I show you the reality and show you where I've had a bit of a slap in the face by nature this year, but I want to share with you the highs and the lows and what I've learnt from this year, and a bit about what I'll be doing different next year. So come on down to the garden. So welcome to the Polytunnel this year, and I'm going to take you on a bit of a tour now to show you what's different. And I thought I would do this now because I'm just about to harvest the second batch of tomatoes for canning. So come on in and let's check out what's going on in here. So in this bed here, I've got beetroot, I got kale, some Brussels sprouts, some peas and some French beans and some radish. So this bed actually has been quite transitional this year. I've grown some new potatoes in here, and I'm really glad that I've put some Brussels sprouts in there because it's been such a wet summer. Overnight I lost over 80 Swedes, and I think I lost 40 Brussels sprouts, and around the same cauliflowers. The slugs have just been ferocious this year, and I just thought I'm going to try, because I had an inkling this year that we were going to have a rubbish summer. So I wanted to keep some greens in here. So the only Brussels sprouts I got left are the 3 I put on the end there. So I'm really glad I done that. And it's made me realise how I need to do more of that when I'm getting that inkling of the wet summers. And I've just been constantly planting throughout the year radish and beetroot whenever there's spaces in here. So let's have a look at some of the other beds. So these are the 2 rows I've got of tomatoes. And so far I've harvested, I think it was 8 kilos, which made it 16 jars of preserved tomatoes for the winter, because my goal eventually is to have our own tomatoes all year round. So we've obviously been picking tomatoes if we need to make tomato sauce and for salad so far. I'm just about to take the next harvest, which is up to about here, where the tomatoes are red. So I'm hoping that will be around another 8 kilos, so it'll take me up to 32 jars. We roughly use about 2 jars of tomatoes a week. And obviously whilst it's in season, so depending on the year, last year we were harvesting tomatoes from in here the end of June right up until the end of September when blight hit. This year we didn't get our first harvest in here until I think it was mid-July, so quite a difference because it's wet. So we've been harvesting from July, and I'm hoping we'll be able to harvest fresh tomatoes up until at least the end of September this year. So that's a couple of months. And I have to do the maths for the rest. So I'm hoping by the end of the day I'll have my 32 jars. And in between, I'm growing 2 different kinds of basil. So this side, I've got sweet basil. And this side, I've got sacred basil, known as Tulsi. So that basil is more culinary, and this one is more medicinal. But it's great aroma as soon as you touch them. Oh, they instantly make me smile. And also, it's great to stop any pests, because they don't like the aroma. So great companion planting. And then around all the plants this year, every time we've been cutting grass, I've just been putting the cuttings around, and it saved me having to feed any of these. So I haven't fed them at all this year, whereas last year I was having to feed them every week, and they've been doing great. I do need to sort the tops out though, because I need to get my partner to do that because they've passed my height now to sort them out. So that's the tomato beds. I've got around, I think, I've got 36 or 39 of the Amish paste tomatoes, and then I've got there 8 cherry tomatoes, because we use those just for fresh with salads. But that's how it's looking this year, and I'm pretty pleased with it so far. So down in this section of the polytunnel, there's a bit of a mixed match really, but I'll take you through some of the plants. So it's a mixture of medicine and a mixture of food, which is, you know, food is medicine, so it's all one, isn't it? So we've got calendula, we've got hearties, I've got my gutta cola there, and my gutta cola is doing amazing this year. I've already made a litre of tincture from it. I'll easily get another litre, possibly 2 litres, and I'll be drying some to make oils. I've got celery, some more calendula. I've got datura, which is a plant I'm experimenting with at the moment. I've got different kinds of tobacco, including sacred tobacco, Nicotiana rustica. Mapacho is the common name. I've got some lemongrass, I've got some carrots, I've got chard and spinach. Down the bottom here, I've got ashwagandha, I've got my sage, I've got red clover, I've got coriander, I've got major celandine, more red clover, and then I've got my courgettes. Now these courgettes here, I need to cut back a load of the leaves because they're starting to get that mildew, which they do get at this time of the year, and to be honest, we've had such a wet summer, I'm just grateful I haven't had it in here up until now. So this bed here is my chilli bed really. So I've got lots of bell peppers on the go. Each plant I'm getting about 6 to sometimes even more peppers on each plant. I seem to be picking peppers all the time to eat at the moment. Although they haven't gone red yet, but that's fine. I've got some jalapenos and I've got some ring of fire chilies, and they are just starting to go red. I've got my cucumbers, I've got my gherkins, and I've got my baby sugar watermelons, which aren't quite as big as last year at the moment, but I'm sure because the season's extended in here that I'll be getting some nice watermelons before the end, and they are a smaller variety, so those ones there aren't too far off. So let's have a look in the other beds. So this bed here next to the chilli bed is my green summer bed really. So I've got a load of rainbow chard, a load of spinach, summer purslane, and then I've got a load of lettuce here. Some of it's going to seed very quickly because it's the heat in here, so I'm constantly trying to successional sowing. It's still something that I don't get right every year because the temperatures are different every year, and this year it was so hot in the one part of the season. It was kind of pre-solstice springtime weather, and it was so hot that the lettuce just wasn't germinating. So next year one of the things I need to do is set up a sowing station in the shade somewhere, possibly in the woods, in case we get that kind of weather again. These are kind of my experimental miscellaneous beds. So I've got some spinach, I've got some parsley, I've got my beetroot, I've got a couple of sweet corn, not too much because my partner can't eat too much sweet corn, so there's enough for us to have that delicious taste of sweet corn. And every time I come in here I do try and encourage the pollination because it's not outside with the wind. And then I've got some chickweed on the end, which I'm purposely cultivating, allowing to go because I love adding chickweed into some of my balms, and it's great as tincture. And then at the back there, all I've got there is some drying beans. So I've got, what have I got? I've got Belotti, Rhondda Black, Greek giant white beans, and I've got some runner beans, which I really like growing for the beans inside. And this year, I'm just growing those there for my seed for next year because they'll dry really lovely in here. And this year I've taken a break from bulk growing beans just because there's only so much I can do. And next year I want to develop a way to make bulk cropping easier, which I'll talk about when I'm outside in the garden with you. And this is just one of the little corners I've started developing this year. So you might notice I've got a bay tree and some lavender. A grapevine amongst there. Another little corner I'm developing is here, which I've got an Agnus castus bush, and if I take you over the top, I've got some rosemary and a passion vine starting to grow. So I got lots of gaps outside from the slugs eating, so I'm experimenting with some late sowings of onions, salad onions that I can add and fill in the gaps. And amongst some of the seeds that I'm sowing for in here, the polytunnel, I've got lots of greens such as endive, mizuna, corn salad, rocket. I'm also planting some red drumhead and winter green cabbage and April spring cabbage for outside to hopefully fill in the gaps that the slugs have left. So welcome outside to the veg garden. I'm going to show you through each bed, and believe it or not, the weather has changed significantly since I recorded last week in the Polytunnel. All those things in the Polytunnel that I showed you are now redden up because we've had 28 degrees here, which is really unknown for September. It's really strange because I'm harvesting the hawthorn berries and the elderberries. There's crushed leaves on the ground as the leaves are starting to fall for autumn, and we're in 28 degrees. So this bed here, it's a bit sparse really. I did have my potatoes here, so that's why there's a gap there. And then the gap down this end is from the swede. I planted out 80 swede and the slugs ate the lot. Although I can see one possibly coming back there. But you know, I always say the garden gives you an ego slap every year. And this year, because we had such a wet summer, you wouldn't believe it now, I was putting things out and the slugs were going through them quicker than I could keep on top of it. I've managed to outcompete the kale bed behind there. I've managed to outcompete the slugs there. There are some gaps, but there's still some spaces. So this year we are going to be short on swede, so it's something that I will be buying. So we've got some nasturtium, we've got some borage, we've got celeriac. So we got this gap here where the slugs ate 80 odd swede overnight. Not that I'm bitter. And then we've got celeriac, we've got borage, we've got some spinach and chard, nasturtiums, tree spinach, and some mallow down the bottom. Now this time of year, I do tend to keep the dandelions in, and as I'm weeding, I can then harvest the roots for medicine. So let's have a look at some of the other beds. So this is the kale bed, and it was brimming with kale, but there's quite a few left. Now the slugs have hammered quite a few. I probably planted more like 60 kale plants. I reckon there's probably about 30 left, so I did manage to outcompete them, but there's quite a few gaps. Now what I've been doing in the Polytunnel is I've been growing some spring cabbage and red cabbage that I can hopefully use to fill in the gaps where things have been eaten, and where the swedes have been eaten, I'm hopefully going to use that to put some fresh spring onions in, so I'll have some early onions and some overwintering onions in there, so all is not lost. At the end of each bed you might notice I've got things like mallow, I've got cosmos in this bed, I've also got some sunflowers. The mallow is mainly for medicine, everything else is for the wildlife. So this bed has been another sacrificial bed, you could say, really, this year. In this bed was meant to be Brussels sprouts and cauliflowers. So the slugs got through 40 Brussels sprouts because I thought I would outplant them, and the same amount of cauliflowers. I've got 2 cauliflowers left hidden amongst the nasturtiums down the bottom, and no Brussels sprouts left. So thank goodness I planted 3 Brussels sprout plants in the Polytunnel, so we can still have Brussels sprouts as our Christmas dinner. The other things in here, we've got calendula, and then down the bottom we've got self-seeded nasturtiums, and I've got some hollyhocks and sunflowers. So in this bed, whilst it has been hit by slugs, a lot has survived. So we've got tree cabbage here, and we've got some purple sprouted broccoli, there's nasturtiums and some chives there. And it was really funny the other day, we had a friend visiting, and I was saying about everything that had been had by the slugs, and he was saying, we just stood by this bed, and he was saying, the one thing I found is they never touch the tree cabbage. And I said, ta-da! You can see they've touched the tree cabbage. I mean, some caterpillars have had a go as well. But I'm not too bothered. Even with the kale, I'm not bothered, because what happens, I'll be snipping away and harvesting these to eat. By the time the winter comes, everything that eats it will go underground or have gone off to do their thing, and they will all just come back lovely. So I don't worry. And with tree cabbage, if I keep cutting this, it will keep in this bed for 2 years. So it's nothing to worry about in this particular bed. So let's go and check out some of the other beds. So this bed and that bed over there is mainly for medicinal plants and experiments. So here I've got the beautiful black hollyhock plants. I actually planted those a couple of years ago. They didn't come to anything, but they obviously self-seeded because I I didn't plant these this year and they just appeared. Isn't it wonderful when that happens? I've got my henbane plants here. There's only a couple left now and I need to harvest the seed from these. So these are one of the experimental plants I've been growing and working with for the last couple of years. You might say the witchy kind of plants. It is said that henbane might have been one of the plants that Boudica's medicine woman used to get the truth out of people. And then I've got some mapacho plants there, sacred tobacco. So let's go to the next medicine bed and see what's in there. Okay, so in this bed, it's the first year ever, the slug's got milk thistle. I can just about handle milk thistle because she's so spiny, so I'm amazed that the slug's got there. So I've got some burdock here. I grow burdock purposely as an annual really in the garden because burdock will break a spade if you try to dig it out of the woods. I've got some wild growing in the woods, but I always try and get her in the beds because she's so much easier to dig out in autumn. Then got some beautiful California poppy coming along. Had such a wet summer, which I feel stupid saying that in this weather. A California poppy is only now coming along, so I'm hoping for a mild autumn so I can get at least 3 litres of tincture out of her. We've got some marshmallow on the end, wide lettuce, so you can see wide lettuce in the corner there gone to seed, and there's some here that I planted later on, and then mullein down there, and right on the end is chamomile. Now my chamomile is coming to the end. I have poked in some new annual chamomiles, so that's German chamomile, to see if I can get another crop depending on what the weather's going to be like. And then in the polytunnel I have planted up some perennials, so Roman chamomile. So let's have a look at the larger beds next, to the right of these beds. So this is the area that I've planted up with mypex. There's plastic over there and there's mypex here. One of the reasons I've done this is because it's just me in the garden. I do have my herbal apprentices 2 days a month in the garden, but apart from that it's me, and it's quite a big garden to handle. So I've decided this year to give myself a break. I'm going to start by doing a bulk crop here, and then next year I'll put mypex over there for the other bulk crop. So the one bulk crop I didn't grow this year is our drying beans. I have grown a small amount in the polytunnel just for seed, but next year I'll be planting that up probably with something like 300, if not more, drying beans. It'll be interesting to work out how many I need. And then here, this should be brimming with pumpkins, but you can see there's gaps where you can see the black mypex through it. Guess what? You guessed right, slugs. But I'm happy enough. I planted way more than we need, just the two of us. But we've got plenty of squashes coming, and who knows, if this weather continues, it will keep, and we have a late frost, I'll have even more on each of these individual plants. So I think there's 5 varieties in here, and next year I will plant right the way down to the bottom, so I'll be extending this mypex area, because I think it's a really great way for me, with just me, to grow on bulk, because once it's planted out, I can pretty much forget about it, and if the slugs get in, the slugs get in. And the one thing I have learnt, not to plant everything out together, to plant even more than what I need. So when there are gaps, like there's gaps now, so the weeds don't fill the gaps, what I'll be doing next year is I'll have some in the polytunnel in large pots, so they'll keep growing, and if slugs get to anything, I'll stick them out. And I'll just have to think about, because you can guarantee if I plan for that, the slugs won't eat anything and I'll end up with loads in pots, so I'll have to give them to my friends. And then over there next year will be my bean patch. So last but not least, let's look through the main medicine patch. So I'll probably go through this in sections because it's a bit big for me to show you all in one go. And you know what, I've got such a smile on my face because I've got the roses behind me, and the scent, because of the sun at the moment, those volatile organic compounds are really coming out, and I feel like I'm basking in rose medicine. Well, not feel, I am basking in rose medicine just being here. So we've got my row of elecampane here. Elecampane is coming to the end. Elecampane I work with for the root, and the reason I've got so many is because I don't want to harvest every single root every year, so kind of growing like a willow coppice really. I've got some yacon here, not bulk growing it this year. It's in a patch amongst the grass, so it will be what it will be. Mainly doing it so I can keep the plant going, and it may be one that I move to the Mypex area I was talking to earlier in the future, who knows. And then I've started a cultivated rose patch. Do you know what? I've never grown cultivated roses. I've grown wild roses, well in fact I haven't grown them, nature's grown them. And I'm absolutely loving it. So next year I'm going to fill this with a lot more roses. And I've been amazed how much medicine I've got out of it. I've got 2 large jars of dry petals, and so far I think I've got 3 litres of glycerite, so just from a few plants. So you don't need many plants for medicine, and remember it's all about reducing our medicine miles. Then I've got some wormwood there, sage and feverfew. So I'll talk about the rest when I move the camera around now and show you the different sections. Okay, so we're at a different corner. This is my thyme patch. The thyme I've cut right back here to see which ones are still alive and which are leggy. So I want to try and condense this patch because I don't need quite as much. The ones standing tall there, they are the valerian, dying off now this year, and again that's very similar to Alecampane. That would be a root I'm taking. And then I've got lady's mantle planted amongst the valerian. Now I'm not too bothered if I accidentally dig that up when I do dig up some of the valerian as they take their turn over the years, because it self-seeds like crazy and it'll be a way of keeping on top of it with anything else. And then just behind here I've got the St. John's wort and the mugwort, but I'll go around the other side because you'll be able to get another good look at that as well. So we've got the mugwort over there I mentioned, and St. John's wort is having a second flourish because of all this amazing sunshine, and it's absolutely brimming with bees. Then got yarrow there that's coming to an end. Got some lemon balm plants here, motherwort, oregano, and then just behind me here I've got some blessed thistle and skullcap, some wood betony, and I'll just move the camera because hopefully you'll be able to see the last few then. So as I just ended the last bit, I showed you the blessed thistle and skullcap. I've also got major celandine, and I've mentioned the feverfew behind and the sage. I've got some cowslip here and some horseradish. Although the slugs love horseradish, so it's really hard to get the horseradish going. And because of the hot weather, the cowslip are actually thinking it's springtime again and starting to have another bloom. And I noticed earlier how fiddlehead ferns are doing the same. And I've also got a row just on the end of the Alecampane there of some marshmallow. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea of the garden. I've done some close-ups of things to help you. And the main thing is to show you the reality of the garden. Because you see so many things on YouTube and so many living off-grid, self-sufficient. And I do this and I look at many and I think those amount of beans aren't going to get you through the winter. Those amount of squashes, that amount of herbs. When people talk about the volume that they say, and as I said, there's 2 of us here to probably see us through the winter. I'm assuming from experience I'll probably need about 300 bean plants. So that's to put things into perspective. And you saw the tomato situation in the Polytunnel. Got 39 tomato plants. So far I've now made the second batch of tomatoes, so I think I've got 32 jars of tomatoes to see us through the winter, and I'm hoping to get at least another 15 if not more, and we do get a couple of months of fresh tomatoes there. But every year I want to do a little tour of the garden to show you the reality and to show you what's worked and what hasn't worked. As I said, this year I've lost loads to slugs, but whatever, that happens. Every year there's a challenge, and as I said, the great thing about this, you can never become too cocky because nature is in charge. And I think every year nature enjoys giving us a bit of an ego slap so we don't get too cocky and we realise that we are the guardians of the land, we are the caretakers, but we aren't the boss and we aren't in charge. So I really hope that this has inspired you to maybe grow something next year you haven't grown. Even if you've just got a window box, you can always get something growing. If you've got a small space, I highly recommend focusing on salads, greens such as kale and spinach, and then having a small window box for teas, things that grow quickly like mint, and lemon balm. But you also might like, if you like things like basil and oregano, if you're into Italian food especially, then they can be great ones. I appreciate not everyone can grow in this scale, but this is my business, you know, this is my apothecary for my students and for my clients, and the rest of it is for us. And every year I'm experimenting, because the goal is to have as much food as possible without killing myself. That's the key thing, because it is a balance. You know, I'm not one of those YouTube people that you see that they're making the money from the YouTube videos. This is their job. I do this as a hobby, really, because I love sharing wisdom. I love sharing my passion to get other people motivated out there. So I have a full-time job. You know, I work as a teacher, I work as a herbalist, I have a clinic, I have students. Sometimes I'm working 7 days a week because I run courses on the weekend. So this I have to fit in when I can. So I do what I can do, and this is the reality. There's no team. As I said, the help I get 2 herbal apprentices, and I get 2 days a month from them each, and that's all the help I get in the garden, and that's all the help I get with everything. So it shows you what's possible when love, passion and motivation is behind it. So hopefully that love, passion and motivation has come across the screen to you. And if you've enjoyed this channel and this YouTube video, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps get the videos out there, get this wisdom out there to help everyone forage, grow and create their own medicine. So not only reduce food miles, but reduce medicine miles. And don't forget, you can also head on over to my website, selenawalker.earth, and sign up to my free newsletter. I'll see you all soon.